Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jamie and we have a big month to wrap up. That is September, and we're talking about what my plans are for reading this month in October. I hope you guys are having a great October so far. I mean, it's October 2nd, but I hope you're as excited for October as I am, and really, I'm sure as everybody is here in the bookish community, it is the best reading month. It is time for spooky, horror, fun, atmospheric, all the vibes. So I will definitely be getting into what I'll be reading this month in October, but first we have a lot to cover with September. I read a record 13 books in September, which I don't think I've ever come anywhere close to that before, but there are a couple caveats to that I will get into in a minute. And actually, I don't have many of them as a physical copy. I kind of unhauled several of them already, so yikes. Or I listened to them on audiobook. But even though I did unhaul a bunch of them already, I literally couldn't even wait to make this video. I just wanted them gone. I did overall have a pretty good reading month. Kicking it off with the first book I read this month, that was Chlorine by Jade Song. I actually read this over Labor Day weekend, so the very last days of August and into the first days of September. Chlorine by Jade Song. I have an entire review of this on my page, but I do think that this was one of the best books I read this month and maybe even all year. I really loved this. This is a dark fairy tale, contemporary setting about a high school swimmer who longs to become a mermaid, and she will do whatever it takes to make that happen. I was absolutely blown away by this as a debut novel. I thought it was so bizarre but very heartfelt. It was covering a lot of ground as far as themes and reflection. It includes discussion on bodily autonomy, competitive youth sports, young love or infatuation, and sexual identity. A lot of things, and I absolutely enjoyed every minute of it, although it is a little bit gruesome and difficult to stomach at times. But overall, I was just so impressed with this, and I did order myself a copy to keep on my library. It's not yet here, otherwise I'd be showing it to you right now. But nonetheless, I absolutely enjoyed my time with Chlorine. Next up, a book that I struggled through, and honestly I don't even know if I should count it as finished because I did DNF right at the end. I kind of skimmed, but I technically DNF'd, but I'd also read so much of it already that's I knew what was going on. That is The Overstory by Richard Powers. This is a gigantic magnum opus kind of book. It's over 600 pages long. Already a bad sign for me. I should have known that I was not going to like that. But a friend did want me to read it, and I have been interested in reading Richard Powers for a while because he's pretty well known in the literary fiction genre, and I saw this highly rated across a lot of people that I trust, so I did want to go ahead and give it a try. And basically, this is an eco-fiction story, and it combines several perspectives. I think 8 to 10 different perspectives about all these people whose lives have been influenced in some way by trees, which is something I was all about. I was really interested in that. And it's about how all of their paths kind of converge and they come together when they all decide to become a part of an activist movement and performance where they go and chain themselves to a tree in the redwood forest. So it's about all of their journeys coming together and talking about how they need to save the trees. There were certainly elements of this that I did like, and I actually thought the writing was, strong. I didn't have a problem with the writing. It just felt very overdrawn. It felt like it was taking forever to get to the meat of the story. And while I did find their pursuits very admirable, I just didn't understand why it needed to be so long. This is a very common problem that I have. Long books are just not for me. They're just never going to be for me. It's rare that I ever find any that I actually like. And even though the writing was strong, I just felt that the message was just a little bit too simple to require that many pages, honestly. It was nice, it was fine, but I just don't think it was strong enough in my memory to really warrant any further exploration. So yeah, I did not end up even completing that one. I can't say I completely read it because I did skim a lot and basically DNF'd at the end. Next up, a book I absolutely did not skim or DNF, that is The September House by Carissa Orlando. Another book that I have an entire video dedicated to on my channel, a spoiler-free review. I absolutely adored this book. It's not super spooky, though there are a couple moments that I was like genuinely pretty spooked by, but overall I've been hearing people call this more of a cozy horror. And that's an interesting, I guess I don't know enough about the cozy horror genre because on the one hand, I don't find that this is like overly tense all the time, but on the other hand, there are some very gruesome descriptions and the horror is definitely very poignant, I think. But I also understand that the perspective that the story comes from just brings down the level of horror, and I actually did mention that in my review as well. But regardless of what the actual genre is, I just had the best time with this. This follows a woman who moved into the house of her dreams, and though it is extremely haunted, she adores her house and she will not give up on it. And all of this culminates in the worst hauntings during the month of September. But after her husband goes missing, her daughter has to come and stay with her, and she is absolutely terrified for what her daughter may discover about her house. There's a lot more that goes into it, and it actually has a pretty well done thematic element that I really enjoyed. But overall, I just felt that this was so atmospheric, a little bit campy, and like maybe a little bit silly, but still with really strong horror elements and just all around a great time. I feel like most people that have picked this up have really enjoyed it, even though I know Kayla from Books and Lala didn't absolutely love it, but I feel like a lot of people would like this, and it's just gorgeous. Like, I had to go and pick myself up a copy of it because I think it's something that I will return to and definitely recommend for future autumn seasons. Okay, next up are the 3 books that I read for my 24-hour readathon, which is one of the ways that I ended up hitting such a high number of books this month, was because I read 3 very short books, and one of them I've already unhauled. The first of those being The Cement Garden by Ian McEwan. Yeah, I unhauled this immediately because I simply hated it. So Ian McEwan is a favorite author of mine. I was about to say I'm really on the fence with him because Atonement is one of my favorite books. But every book that I've read from him since has been a little bit odd. And The Cement Garden is no exception. This is his first published work actually, which is truly insane to me because I don't know how this got published and I don't know how it turned into being a contemporary classic author because this is just crazy to me. But anyway, this follows the story of 3 or is it 4? I don't know, 3 or 4 siblings who are abandoned in a house and they do things that should not be done. That's what I'll say. I'm gonna move on from it. It wasn't good. I did not like it. I don't recommend it to anyone. Kind of rough. Moving on. I read The Vegetarian by Hong Kong and I really enjoyed this one. It is definitely weird. This follows a woman who, after having a very strange dream, she kind of cold turkey quits all animal products. So she's actually a vegan, not a vegetarian, just FYI. But her family is so shocked and honestly aggravated by her decision to stop eating meat that they try to force her to eat meat in some very terrible ways. And it actually goes much deeper than that very brief top line synopsis, but really the core of the story is about female autonomy and the male gaze and the objectification of women and just how, as a society, women are treated as something to be owned and controlled, and just there's a lot of societal issues at play here, and it's a little bit odd because it does take some very strange perspectives for this story, and her transformation is difficult to watch, definitely. I had a good time with this, and it really made me think. I had to sit with this for a while and just like let all of the themes absorb in my brain, and those are the kind of books I really enjoyed. I don't think this is a perfect book by any means, and I can definitely understand why there are people out there who don't like this, but I think that it did something very unique, and I think it handles its themes pretty well. It's not perfect, but it made me feel something. And then we have The Deep by River Solomon, which is sort of a take on like a fable. It follows a society of mer people, sort of. They don't actually say that they're mer people, but that's basically what they are. They're mermaids, and they live in a deep underwater society, and they are actually the ancestors of enslaved pregnant women who were thrown off of slave ships. So as to be expected with this kind of synopsis, it has a lot to do with culture and places of origin and cultural identity. And it follows our protagonist, who is a member of this society with a very unique special power. One person per generation from this society is given the role of the memory receiver, and they hold all of the memories of their society's past because the memories are too painful and it would hurt the rest of the society if everybody had these memories. But our protagonist decides that she does not want to bear the burden of these memories, and she wants to escape and go to the surface. This was a quick and easy read, and I thought the themes were really poignant and just overall really well done. I loved this as a short, quick, easy read, but still full of emotion and poignant themes. So overall, I enjoyed this as a modern contemporary fairy tale. It definitely reads like a fable or a fairy tale, and I will definitely pick up more from River Solomon in the future. The next book I read, I am happy to say, after how many times of saying it was on my TBR, that's Fates and Furies by Lauren Groff. I did have a physical copy of this, but I ended up unhauling it because while I did not hate this book, I know I'm never gonna read it again, and honestly, it's not good enough for me to recommend or to hold on to in my library in case somebody might read it, because I don't think I would necessarily recommend this. I know a lot of people like Lauren Groff. I know she's a very popular contemporary author, and I am interested in her other works. I own a copy of The Matrix, and The Vaster Wilds just came out recently, and I will not lie, I've been interested in that book. But Fates and Furies was my first Lauren Groff, although I actually did read and unhaul her short story collection, Florida. So I don't know, me and Lauren Groff are just not really getting along. But anyway, Fates and Furies. This follows a man and wife duo, and it's told from both perspectives. It follows their life from their meeting all the way through their marriage, and he's a playwright. Essentially, the idea is that both sides of the marriage have their interpretation of all the events that occurred in their life. And I said this in my more comprehensive review of it when I did my 24-hour readathon. This is absolutely a literary fiction tour de force. It's a massive book coming in at almost 600 pages. Another problem for me. But aside from that, you can definitely tell that Lauren Groff just put in the work with this book. It is very, very detailed. And I wouldn't necessarily say that any of those details I was uninterested in. It was more just I just don't know if it's really worth all of that effort, because there's just honestly not as much nuance as I would expect from this kind of setup. And honestly, the husband character is just awful. He's awful from start to finish. And when you're doing a book that's about both sides and kind of understanding where they're coming from and the nuance of that situation, I would just expect at least both of the characters to be very, very complex. And I don't really think that he was. I don't know. It's just a long book about these two people. And if you don't like one of them or even both of them, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be a hard book to deal with. I don't know. I totally understand what she was going for with this book. It just feels like she tried a little too hard on it. It does not come natural. I don't know. I'm glad I read it because it's been on my TBR for so long, but it's just ugh. That's what I was going on about. Yikes. I unhauled it. Next up, yet another book that I unhauled as soon as I was done with it. That's Romantic Comedy by Curtis Settenfield. Ooh, this was just absolutely not for me. This is this was painful. This was really painful for me to read. I pretty much hated every single minute of it. And I just don't understand that there was so much hype for this earlier on this year. I don't get it at all. This follows the story of a woman who is a writer for an SNL adjacent TV show. I guess in the book they couldn't say SNL, so she had to come up with a fake one, but it's SNL. It's SNL. And she is a very, you know, girl next door, plain Jane kind of character. She's a little bit older and she just does not have a lot of self-confidence. She does not think that she's pretty or anything like that. She's just like, her saving grace is that she's funny, I guess. And lo and behold, she falls in love with a gorgeous, hot pop star. And the book follows their kind of blossoming relationship over the course of a couple years, but a large percentage of this book takes place over the pandemic, and the pandemic is a huge talking point in the book. So I know a lot of people don't like to read books that take place during the pandemic or don't even want it mentioned, so I'm telling you that right now. That's a big part of this book, and I did not know that going in. Look, I already don't like romance, and this was barely a romance. I don't like SNL, and I don't like SNL humor, so the fact that so much of this book was just recounting a day in the life of somebody who works at SNL in like excruciating detail, and for what purpose? To what end? It was literally just to take up 150 pages of explaining what life is like at SNL, and I just don't care. And then the romance angle is just like not interesting to me. Like, I'm sorry, but these people not only don't have enough chemistry, they're also just uninteresting in their own right. It sounds brutal, but that's just my honest truth. I hated this book, and I will never recommend it to anyone. Okay, moving on. The next book I read was The Last to Banish by Megan Miranda, which that's shocking. That was shocking to me as well that I decided to read this. But I was visiting a friend in North Carolina, and so my fiance and I needed something to listen to on the drive, and I really wanted a spooky mystery that was set in North Carolina. I just thought that would be fun and very fitting with the setting, and we needed something quick to listen to on the drive. So I found The Last to Banish, and I have read a Megan Miranda previously, and I absolutely hated it. Absolutely hated it. It was the one, I don't even remember what it's called. Such a Happy Place, such a nice, I don't know. It's the one with the neighborhood on the cover. I don't know which one it was, but anyway, I hated that book. Absolutely hated it. So why I thought that I would pick up another Megan Miranda and like it, I don't really know, but I did. I was just like, this sounds fun. It's about a woman who lives in a town in North Carolina that for some reason is just like plagued with missing people. I find missing person stories like very interesting. I try not to watch a lot of true crime, but when I was working at a television studio, I worked on a lot of true crime, and I had to watch a lot of missing person stories specifically. So they've been something that fascinates me, and the synopsis sounded fun, so I was like, what the heck, whatever, we'll do it, give it a try. And I actually kind of liked this. No one is more surprised than me. Look, it's not the best book in the world. It's not the best mystery in the world, but I actually found it kind of spooky, and the mystery is pretty good. What I loved about it was that you just have all these different missing person cases that are so vastly different that you're just like, how could they all be connected? Why would they be connected? But at the same time, like, you know, they have to be connected because they're all in this one town, and what are the odds that there would be so many cases in just one town? And all of those kind of things are definitely something that I enjoy. I just thought it was fun. Look, it's not super well written. It's not gonna, you know, blow you away, but it was fun. And listening to it on the road, going to North Carolina, we had a great time. Next up, I read Last to Leave the Room by Caitlin Starling, and I do have a full video on this on my channel, so I won't talk too much about it, but me and Caitlin Starling don't always get along. I've read now 2 books from her, and both of them I just have been lukewarm to, I guess. Last to Leave the Room was fine, actually. I liked it more than the other book I've read by her, which is Death of Jane Lawrence. which I just unhauled. I had a copy. I literally, as soon as I made my video about Last to Leave the Room, I got rid of Death of Jane Lawrence. I liked Last to Leave the Room. I just felt like it was more of like an action movie plot than a really thoughtful psychological thriller, which is what I wanted it to be. It's not really a psychological thriller. I guess in some ways it could be, but it just does not go that far with the themes, which is what I wanted it to do. Instead, it's really all about the action and about the weirdness, and I just didn't think it was focused in the right places. And I think that that's a common problem that I've been having with Caitlin Sterling's writing. So, you know, she has great premises, she has really fun ideas, and the horror aspects are pretty fun, but I just don't think that they come together in a succinct or strong enough way to really like drive home what I'm looking for. So it was fine. I just don't know that it's going to be good enough to really make an impression on anybody. Sorry. A book that did leave an impression on me, that is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. I really hope that I would have the vlog that I read this in up before this came out, but it's not gonna happen, so that's the situation. I read The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson, and I absolutely loved it. I'll save most of my thoughts for that vlog, but I had a great time. It's not a 5-star book for me, but that is due in large part because it's technically YA. I'm still not entirely sure, but the main character is 17, and because of that, there are just things that I don't like. I don't like YA, and there are some tropes that definitely happen in this book that I just don't like. So it's not a 5-star book, but aside from the annoying YA things about it, I really had a good time with this book. It's cinematic, it's eerie, it's gothic, it's dark, it's just a lot of fun. So I will save more of my thoughts for that vlog, but yeah, this was a win for me. Next up is a book that I actually have a physical copy of. That's Monsterello by Gerardo Samano Cordova. This was the Literally Dead book club pick for September, and it is a literary horror about a mother whose son dies, and she finds out about an urban legend that could bring him back to life. But instead of coming back as him, he comes back as a demon creature. That setup sounded super fun to me, so I was like very excited to get into this. And literary horror is one of my favorite genres. It's like literary horror, social horror, that kind of thing I was really interested in. And I love stories that deal with grief. I think grief is such a powerful theme and something that's really fun to write about and to read about. So I was very much looking forward to this. In the end, this unfortunately did not deliver exactly what I wanted, just because that synopsis is a very, very, very small part of the story. That part that I was pitched, I was really into, but the story goes kind of off the rails and it really stops being about that, and it turns the metaphor of this demon of grief into something else completely. And it does talk about some interesting things because the demon kind of like has some sentience, and there's an interesting discussion about personhood, being who your parents want you to be, and that sort of thing. But ultimately the messaging just gets really muddled because the story goes in a very strange direction. I didn't dislike it, but I definitely just wish that it would have been kind of more potent with its themes on grief. I don't know, maybe doing the book club discussion will help me to solidify my feelings on this, but I don't know. This didn't work for me as well as I would have liked. And the last book I read in September was A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. I read this via audiobook and I found it to be very short and very simple. I honestly don't have a ton of thoughts about this. I thought it was fine. It's your basic, haunted house story with the usual structure, except what I did think was kind of cool was that it's a spring themed haunted house instead of your typical dark, spooky haunted house. So that was different, although that's not what I wanted because of course it's spooky season. I want to read the dark stuff. Well, I always want to read the dark stuff, so But what's funny about this is that it's actually kind of like a reverse of the September house. Kayla from Books and Lala mentioned this in her vlog, and I thought that was like so on point, and I read both of these in the same month, so I definitely was able to recognize it as well. But, you know, in the September house, the mother is trying to hide the hauntings from her daughter, and in A House with Good Bones, it's about a daughter who goes to stay with her mother, and she notices that there's something going on with the house, but her mother will not admit to what's going on. The problem I had with this book was that it's very obvious very early on what's going on, and it just takes a long time to get there. That in itself didn't necessarily bother me. I kind of got the impression that we were supposed to understand what was going on. Like, I didn't think it was supposed to be a surprise, but I didn't think that there was a ton left beyond that surprise. There just wasn't a ton of substance to this book. It's a very straightforward, basic haunted house story. Take it or leave it. It was short, so that's good. And I did, you know, have an okay time reading it. It just didn't do anything absolutely spectacular. So for September, I definitely, you know, I had some hits in there. The September House, Chlorine, The Year of the Witching, The Vegetarian, The Deep, you know, solid reading month overall. I got through a ton of books. I don't know why that happened that way, but let's hope that the same thing happens in October, because this TBR is out of control. I'm going to try to go in order of like, I'm definitely going to read these books to, if I get to this, that'd be great. But just realistically, looking at how many books I have, I'm not going to get to them all, so let's just hope for the best. The first thing I'm going to talk about is, of course, The Walking Dead Compendium III. I was supposed to read this in September because September was the last month of quarter 3, and I failed. I failed to do it. Even if I would have started it on the last day of September and like gotten nowhere, I still maybe could have counted it towards my success, but I'm not gonna lie to you, I didn't start it, which means that I have to start it immediately. It is moved to my priority for October, which is honestly like that was not part of my plans, but it has to be done, because if I do not make this a priority, I will not hit my goal of finishing this series by the end of the year. And Compendium 3 is the longest one, so I am gonna start this today and hope for the best. Next up are some book club selections, so I will absolutely be getting to these. The first one being The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas. I am so excited about reading this book. I expect this to be a 5-star book for me. Absolutely everyone has said that they love this book. It's a haunted house story with a kind of generational familial twist, and it does take place in Mexico, and I'm so excited for this. Isabel Cañas is a well-loved contemporary horror author, and I'm reading this with my book club, and I am so excited. I'm hoping for 5 stars out of this. And then we have The Burning Girls by Simone St. James, another book club pick, and I have never read any Simone St. James, although she's also quite a popular contemporary suspense, horror, thriller, something in there kind of author. So I'm interested in this. This is about an institute for, I believe, young girls who are like perhaps maybe witches or haunted or something in there. I don't know if it's paranormal. I really don't know too much about this. I just know that it is a suspenseful thriller taking place in an institution for young girls. We'll see. I did not choose this for myself. This was not even on my radar prior to it being a book club selection. So I have absolutely no expectations going in, and maybe that'll mean it's amazing, because so far, no expectations has really worked out for me. Okay, and then a couple books from my fall TBR board that I did in my fall TBR video. The first one being the book that I hope I get to do a little Halloween-y vlog for. That's Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. This is a thriller that takes place in Cornwall, England, a place that I visited, and it takes place on Halloween. So, sounds great. Don't really know anything else about it. I don't like contemporary thrillers, but apparently I liked a Megan Miranda, so anything can happen. I'm keeping my mind open and reading Daisy Darker over the weekend before Halloween. Next up, another book I'm really hoping is going to be a 5 stars. It's been on my TBR for a while. That's World War Z by Max Brooke. I hoped to be reading this as sort of a companion to The Walking Dead, so it would be really great if I read Walking Dead 3 and this kind of close together. We'll just see. Honestly, next to my book club books, it's kind of lower priority, but I hope I get around to it this month because it's on my board, it's what I wanted to do, so, you know, that'd be great. And then we have The Paulbearer Club by Paul Tremblay. This book I am reading for a vlog that honestly at this point is probably not even going to come out until late November at the rate that I'm reading, which is very slow. But it was on my board for October, so I'd really love to read it. And it's kind of interesting because it's a little writing experiment in which one of the characters is writing a memoir and the other character is writing things in the margin and like underlining things and commenting on the memoir and like her recollection of what happened. And I believe that the guy who's writing the memoir, he thinks that his friend is some sort of creature. So I really don't know much else besides that. I don't know if it's actually horror in any way. Paul Tremblay is a horror author, but this doesn't strike me as something that's going to be particularly scary, but I am intrigued by that format. I love a wild, crazy format, a writing experiment. I'm very interested to see what happens here. And I do have this on my list to read for a vlog, so I hope I get to it because I'm very intrigued. And then, it's hard for me to admit, but I did not get to The Secret History by Donna Tartt in September like I was supposed to. Oh, this was painful. It just kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed. Also because it's quite long, so it kept moving down my priority list, even though I've wanted to read it for so long and I do anticipate it being 5 stars. Another thing is that typically with a book this long, I would go for the audiobook, but with this one, I really wanted to read the physical copy. And I think part of the intimidation is just that it's really long, and the other part is just like it kept getting pushed for my new releases. I had a lot of new releases come in, so I really wanted to review those for my channel, so The Secret History just kept getting pushed and pushed. But I would still love to get to this fall. I don't know if it's gonna be in October though, because my TBR is too intense as it is. So we might hold this off until November. Okay, so a couple books that I'm considering bringing on vacation. I'm going on a little trip to Mexico at the end of the month, and truly I just plan to sit on the beach and read the entire time and relax. So I have to figure out the perfect book, and I have 2 options. And they're both hardback, which is like not great for traveling, but it's what I want to read. That's Chain Gang All Stars by Nanya Kwame Aji-Brenya. I've talked at length about this book in other TBR videos, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but essentially it's an absurdist, satirical kind of take on the prison system in which, in this alternate universe, the prisoners fight for their freedom in kind of like a death battle arena, and these 2 prisoners, these 2 women, end up forming a relationship in the midst of this death battle. So a lot of things that sound really fun for me, and I have had a couple people tell me that they absolutely adored this, and I'm just so eager to read it. It didn't make it on my September TBR because I just didn't have the space for it, but I think this would be so much fun to read on my vacation, so that is way up on the list. I think because I'm prioritizing it for my trip that I'll definitely read it this month. But on the off chance that reading experience goes really poorly, I'm going to bring another book with me. You know, do you have to do this? Like when you go on a trip and you plan to bring a book for a trip, like what if the one that you bring is just awful? So I have to bring multiple, and I am bringing Shark Heart by Emily Havnick. I've also talked at length about this book because I really wanted to read it for my 24-hour readathon, but I didn't end up being able to do it. So I've still been dying to read this. I've also heard people say it's incredible. So yeah, I really want to read both of these. I am going to prioritize Chain Gang All-Stars just because I think it will be really like a very propulsive read and just something that will be so fun to sit on the beach and read. Whereas Shark Heart, I think, is going to be sad and also kind of difficult to wrap my head around at times, but we'll see. I'm going to bring both. What are the odds that in the short 5 days that I'm on my trip that I could read both of them? I don't know. We'll see. And the final book I'm going to mention for October, that is Rouge by Mona Awad. I just got this from the library. It's brand spanking new, and I do want to read this. I actually started reading it a little bit, but in the back of my mind, I was just like, I should read Walking Dead 3, because if I don't do it, I'm not going to get to it. But then this is from the library, so it means like I need to read it quickly. Dilemmas. A lot of dilemmas around here about what to read next. But anyway, Rouge by Mona Awad. It's a dark fairy tale. It's a discussion about the modern beauty industry. Both things I'm very interested in, but I just don't know that I really have the time, because I did want to read this, but it's like, I just don't know if I should prioritize this, especially because I haven't been seeing like the most rave reviews. I don't know. Not that many people have read it yet, so I don't know. But regardless, it's on the list, and here's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to read Walking Dead as soon as possible. If I feel like I still have room in my month, I will then immediately read Rouge because I have to return it to the library. Okay, well, thank you for hanging out with me as I told you about my absolutely insane plans for October. I can't even hold them all. That's how many I have. And this doesn't even include the audiobooks, because I never know what audiobook I'm ever gonna get. They're totally random, just depends on when the library gets them in. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, week, month, year, especially October, the best month of the year. I will see you next time. Bye!